Hi everyone, this is Mr. Chang. In this video, we're going to take a look at conditionals. So we're going to look at if and else if, and in addition, if, else if, and then end. So previously we learned about if, then, else, and end. And again, we looked at relational operators. We have the greater than or equal to, the less than or equal to. To test for equality, we have equal, equal, and to test for not equal, we have the tilde and equal. Many computations require more than a single if-else condition, so sometimes you may need to make a series of related comparisons. Now to do that, Lua has another conditional structure called an if, then, else if, end. So for example, we've got, let's say, one condition, and then we have another condition, and we kind of chain them all together. Now flowchart-wise, looks a little different than before. So we have, let's say, a condition, and if it's false, we go to the next condition. So I'll also note that with the else if, you can have as many conditions as necessary. So let's take a look at an example here. So imagine you're keeping track of a player's position inside of your game. So let's go ahead and assign player position to 2. And let's go ahead and go into Roblox Studio. I'll go ahead and add a script for us to test. And we'll say example 1 here, and we'll print example 1. And again, we'll say local player position. Just for argument's sake, we're going to say 2 this time. Now, let's go ahead and create some different conditions. So if the player position is 1, we'll print first place. Else if the player position is 2, we'll print out second place. All right, so let's say if player position equal 1, then we'll print first place. And now we have a new condition. We've got else if. Notice there is no space in between the else and the if. Player position equal 2, then print second place. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. And notice here we've got example 1. We've got the second condition over here. We've got player position equal 2, so we've got second place. Now, just to test it out further, let's just try 1 here, just for testing purposes. So we've got player position equal 1, and notice we have first place here. So always good to test out your code and make sure it works the way you think it's going to work. Let's try example 2. So if the player has less than or equal to 100 Robux, we're going to print bronze status. Else if the player has between 101 and 200 Robux, we're going to print silver status. Else if the player has 200 or more Robux, we're going to print gold status. All right, so let's go back into our Roblox Studio. And again, we're going to say example 2 here, and we'll say print example 2. And we're going to chain our conditions together. Now, just to kind of start off here, we're just going to say Robux equal to nil. And we'll say if Robux less than or equal to 100, then we'll print bronze status. Else if Robux less than 200, we'll print silver status. And else if Robux greater than or equal to 201, then we're going to print gold status. All right, so let's just test this out. And so far, because we have Robux equal to nil, we actually have an error message in line 14, just kind of handy here, because it's saying here that it actually can't proceed past this point because we didn't assign Robux a value. So let's go ahead and test that here. Now let's go ahead and test that for 0 and see what happens here. So we say Robux equals 0. Then we have bronze status. Okay, let's try a different number. Let's try 101. So 101 will go to this condition here. So we've got silver status for 101. And let's test this out for 500 Robux. So 500 Robux is greater than or equal to 201. So let's see if we get gold status now to print out. And we do. All right, so again, whatever condition evaluates the true first is where our statement will be executed. All right, so let's take a look at another example. So if the player has 90 or more points, we're going to print A. Else if the player has 80 to 89 points, we're going to print out B. Else if the player has 70 to 79 points, we're going to print out C. And lastly, if the player has less than 70 points, we're going to print out F. All right, so let's go ahead and comment this out here. And let's go ahead and add here example 3. So we have print example 3. And again, we're going to say points here. We're going to chain our conditions together. So we've got local points. And again, I'm just starting off with nil here, but I will add a value there to test in a few moments. So we've got, if it's greater than 90, then we're going to print out A. And else if points greater than or equal to 80, then we're going to print out B. And next up, we've got else if points greater than or equal to 70, then we're going to print out C. And else if points less than 70, then we're going to print out F. All right, so let's try this on a number of different values for points. So let's try 100 here. So if I have 100, it prints out A. Now let's take a look at this closely here. So 100 is greater than or equal to 90. So that's why we're printing out A here. Now notice that because this condition is true, once it finishes, it actually does not go to any of the other conditions because 100 is greater than 80, but it doesn't print out B. And that's because once the condition is true, it exits the entire conditional block. All right, let's test out another value. Let's test it out for 89. Let's see what it prints out here. So 89, I'm going to run our code here. So 89 gives us a B. And let's look at the code a little more closely here. So 89 is not greater than 90. So this is false over here. Now 89 is greater than 80. So that's why we print out B here. And again, although 89 is greater than 70, it doesn't print out C because, again, this condition is true first. And then after it prints out B, it then exits the entire conditional block here. All right, let's test out for 65 now. So I'm going to test out 65. And test out 65, we have an F. And that is because, again, 65 less than 70, all of these other conditions here are false. So it gets to the else if here, so it prints out false. All right, now let's take a look at another version of this. So at the end of an if chain, we can also have an end, an else and an end. So let's try our last example here. If the player has a score of 900, we're going to print super. Else if the player has a score of between 500 and 899, we're going to print emerging. Else will print getting there. All right, so let's comment out this code here. And let's go ahead and add example 4. Print example 4. And we're going to say local score equal nil for now, but we're going to change that in a few moments here. Again, we're going to chain our conditions together. So we have if score greater than 900, then we're going to print super. Else if score greater than or equal to 500, then we're going to print emerging. And this is the new part of our if-else if. We can also have an else here, which is quite handy. So we've got if both conditions above are false, we're going to print out getting there. So again, let's test this out for a couple of different values. Let's try 1,000. So let's go ahead and try this again here. So 1,000 is going to give us super, which is good. And let's try for 500 here. So we've got 500. And so that's going to give us emerging over here. And now let's try one more. Let's try 0. And so 0 is, this is false, this is false. So let's go ahead and make sure. And so now we have the output of getting there. So again, the else is very handy here to kind of have the last condition here of all of the other conditions above it are false. All right, I hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.